A warm welcome to Tim for becoming the latest patron. I really do appreciate it. These kids are going crazy outside. It is 1,000,000,000 degrees right now, and there's no way in hell that window over there is closing. Alright, it is like literally 31 degrees Celsius, and that is insane. So we're gonna have to deal with some, with some child noises in the background. I'm sorry about that. Anyways, let's get to work. Hi guys, Bolt here once again. Today I am going to try to summarize the latest patch of WARNO, and basically since people just don't like to read, I don't like to read either, but I went through it for you. So I'm gonna try to just tell you all about it in this short video. First of all, let's look at some generic changes, and first we're gonna focus on tanks. Now the suppression of tanks was decreased by 10%, while the dispersion of a shot and tank rotation speed have been increased by 10%. Now the ATGMs of tanks and other ATGM units like infantry have been buffed quite a bit. ATGM missiles travel 10% faster, which is huge, and suppress an additional 120% more. So more than double. If that is how they kind of try to calculate it. Tank availability has been changed across the board, so let's, just make sure you check your armored battle groups before you enter a battle with them. Now, helicopter and ground-based autocannons received kind of a generic change. The accuracy of autocannons has been changed. It now shows the accuracy per salvo instead of per shot. Now, I'm not quite sure what this means in practice. Does it mean that an entire salvo of like 8 shots can either miss entirely or hit entirely, or that only a portion of the salvo hits? This will be something to test out further with different types of autocannons, but that is what Eugen posted in their patch notes. Now, the AP values have been modified for autocannons. 20, 25, and 30mm autocannons now have an AP value of 6, 7, and 8, respectively. But together with that, a lot of changes were also made to AA that might not seem significant at first, but could affect helicopter gameplay quite a bit. All SPAG, or self-propelled anti-air units, the suppression was increased by an additional 5%, while the range was increased by 175%. Now the time between shots for Bucks, Cubs, and Hawks, and also Rapier FSAs, have been set to 4 seconds, while all other AA missiles have been set to 3 seconds. So that is good to note as well. So if you have a buck, a singular buck might have trouble taking out an airplane because it takes 4 seconds in between shots, and that plane, if it's a fast one and flies at a high altitude, he might just already have left the game basically by the time you fire another shot. Another huge change, and it might not sound huge in the beginning, but it really is the smoke duration. Now tanks deploy smoke, but this smoke will disappear in 20 seconds. You might really have to defend on a steady supply of supply trucks near your tanks, or to be able, to keep them smoked, or you have to deploy mortar teams to keep smoking off your tanks if you need to. Together with a speed buff to ATGMs, this already significantly affected tank gameplay, based on the matches that I've done after the patch. Now infantry AT has also been modified quite a bit. Any infantry that previously had an 850 meters range with AT is now limited to 750 meters, so 100 meters nerf. But the accuracy was buffed by 5%, and they also now suppress 200% more, which basically means that you might be better equipped to fight tanks and forests now, which makes sense if you have a decent infantry squad. A huge nerf of engineers took place. The overall availability was reduced, while the cost of these engineers was increased by 5%. Satchel charges, AP and HE values were reduced to 1, and also now use 30 supplies per satchel charge, so it's quite costly. Flamethrowers have been nerfed quite a bit, which I kind of like, to be honest. The suppression was decreased and the range was limited to 350 meters range, and the accuracy was reduced to 45%. Now besides that, this is kind of insane. Snipers have been buffed a huge amount. Sniper units get an additional 500% damage bonus, and for them to get that +1 stealth, they need to actually be standing still for 10 seconds. Now let's move on to some specific changes to NATO and Warsaw Pact forces. First of all, NATO. The Gepard 1A1 and AMX 12 DCA get more ammunition, which, thank the Lord, because the Gepards really ran out really quick, while all PVAD prices were increased to 75%. So the PVAD is actually now quite an expensive unit. Overall changes were made to helicopter transports like the Alouette, UH-1, Gazelle, Pumas, Lynx, UH-60 and CH-47s. They basically now cost more. So you might really not want to sacrifice your infantry transports and actually just straight up sell them after. Tanks have been modified quite a bit, and the same is true of Warsaw. First of all, the Chieftain Mark 9 availability is down from 9 to 8. AMX 30Bs dropped from 12 to 9 per card, while the B2 was dropped from 9 to 8 per card. Now the M60A3 Patton's base veterancy was lowered to 1, initially it was 2, you know, which I understand. It already has a really high fire rate, so it was kind of an insane tank at close range. The M1A1 availability went down quite a bit from 6 to 4, while the HA was decreased from 3 to 2. Now the German tanks also saw a similar change. The 1A1 went from 12 to 10 per card, while the 2A3 and 2A4 decreased from 6 to 3 and 3 to 2 respectively. So in short, less tanks. But that is not all. AA units have been changed quite a bit too. The Chaparral went from 6 to 4 per card, while the PVAT went from 9 to 8, and do remember the price hike as well to 75. The AH1F ATAS, so the AA variant, was moved from the AA tab to the helicopter tab, and the Rocket Apache went from 4 to 2 availability, which finally they really, you know, had to touch upon those Apaches. Now let's look at pack forces. Tunguska got a 10-point discount, while all AT guns got a price hike and an accuracy nerf. Unfortunately, the D44 isn't a sniper anymore, which really hurts my soul. But anyways, the MI2 and MI8 transports were set to 30 and 40 points respectively. Now the Cub availability went down to 3, the OSA availability went down to 4, and the KA50 Akula, the AA version, moved from the AA tab to the Heli tab. So they made quite a few changes, if you really look at the patch notes there. Now in terms of tanks, huge changes for Warsaw tanks. Basically all T55 variants were touched upon, with availability nerfs and price hikes. The same is true for T62, you now get less per card. The T72's got a similar change. Those kids are really going at it outside, I'm sorry about that. Availability changing for T72s from 9 to 8 in the case of T72M, and 9 to 6 in the case of T72M1. So the 7th Panzer definitely got a kind of, you know, a good amount of nerf, but the same is true for NATO, so I think it's quite balanced, but we'll see about that. Lastly, the T80Bs went from 9 to 8 per card, while the BV went from 6 to 4, and the T80BV IZD39s went from 6 to 4 availability as well. So in summary, quite a lot of changes to the availability of tanks, while AT Infantry has been buffed together with ATGMs, the speed buff to ATGMs together with the tank availability and tank smoke nerf. I really do think that gameplay will change, but let's see what kind of post-patch fixes Eugen implements before we make a final adjustment. Together with the, you know, the buffs to Spags and the price buffs to AA, we'll have to really see how that affects, you know, ground to air and air to ground gameplay. So far, I have noticed that planes are a little bit more deadly, but we'll just have to kind of wait and see. I'm leaving the best for last. We have the 10v10 version of Darkstream, which is going to be epic. And last, we have the drag and drop feature of battle groups. So we can now actually organize our battle groups to, you know, to the final point of dragging the cards across and organizing them however you would like. I think this is a huge help because now you can have your cheapest units in the beginning and your more expensive units in the end, or you can group your AT infantry together with your, you know, support infantry and all that kind of stuff. So it really, it's going to make deck building a lot more fun. Anyways, that was it for this one. Once again, a huge shout out to all the patrons of the page, and I will see you guys back in the next one. Take care.